Hey guys, Mana here, bringing you another episode of More Dots. This is episode 3, and I've got a ton of questions, so if you don't mind me, I'm going to get right to it. First question from Baden85. I recall you saying you think there's nothing wrong with Affliction in terms of DPS. I ran Baron and Hold the other night, and on Argoloth, using Affliction spec, I had one 359 eye level and two 365 eye level pieces of gear on, and I was pulling 5k DPS. The kind of DPS will not down him in time before he enrages, that's true. When using my destruction spec with the same pieces of gear, I pull 10k. I have all my gear reforged and gemmed. I was wondering what your thoughts were on this. I would greatly appreciate it. Alright, so I see this question way too much in forums. So hopefully by answering it here, I'll see it a little bit less in the forums. I doubt it. Here's the thing. The information that you have is far too limited. The data that you have is far too limited. You know, you're going by a couple of attempts, and you're assuming that just because you did worse with Affliction than you could with Destruction, then Affliction is a worse spec. It's not. It's just, it might be a worse spec for you, but not for others. What I mean by that is that play style and player skill, what you enjoy using, will oftentimes be what you're best with. So just because you do worse with Affliction than Destruction doesn't mean that Affliction is bad. It just means that you're better with Destruction and that you probably enjoy using Destruction more. Like I said before, all three specs are competitive. Just use whatever you enjoy using the most. So hopefully that answered that question. Next question from Beholder505. I study my class relentlessly. I use SimCraft, know my stat priorities as I check them regularly, and know my rotation very well. I'm always prepared. I pre-pot, reforge, and chant gem properly, but I'm so off and on inconsistent. There are fights where I'll do very well, and then there are fights that I'll suck horribly. I think my problem is my inability to focus on two things simultaneously. I think I move around too much, especially on heroic fights where I'm worried about mechanics, and I think that this is where I start sucking pretty bad. I think I know what I should be doing, but I just can't get myself to break through it. Any advice? Alright, so honestly, I think I know what the problem is. You're not flasking, man, and you're not eating your food. I mean, you're pre-potting, you're reforging and enchanting and gemming, but I do not see you using your flask, and that's pretty bad. I'm just kidding. Seriously though, I think I got a couple pieces of advice that can help you out. Alright, so first of all, you say that you're having trouble focusing on two things simultaneously. So I'm gonna assume this means that you're also having trouble focusing on three things, four things, etc. Which is a pretty safe thing to assume, I would think. But you also say that you know your spell priority very well. I believe your exact words are, I know my rotation very well. Yeah, so you know your rotation very well. So I'm gonna assume that this means that you're not focusing on your rotation while you're in a boss. And if you are focusing on your rotation, then you need to learn your rotation to the point where you don't have to focus on it. So next thing, about focusing on two things at once. I would have to question what are the things that you're focusing on, because if they happen to be something related to your UI, then you have to first think, is this important? Do I need to see this? And if the answer is no, then you should be eliminating that from your UI. But if the answer is yes, then you should be adding it to your focus priority. It's something I made up. It's basically a fancy way of talking about your awareness. Pretty much, it's a mental checklist of all the things that you need to be worrying about in an encounter. So the point of this focus priority, this mental checklist, is to make you a more aware player. So let's say you're on a boss. Doesn't matter what boss. It can be any boss. There's two things happening. All right, just two. The first is you're going to be using your spell priority, but you're not going to be thinking about it. And the second is that you're going to be thinking about your focus priority, your mental checklist. You're going to be thinking about all the mechanics that you need to be watching for, and that's what's going to make you a more aware player. Because it basically forces you to be more aware. You know, it trains you to be more aware. You're going to be using your spell priority, but at the same time, you're going to be looking at the ground. You're going to be looking at yourself. You're going to be looking at the area around you, and you're going to be able to tell, just what the hell is going on. And finally, as for moving around too much, well, there's not much I can say here. Basically, just try to force yourself to only move the bare minimum and continue DPSing. You should only be moving as much as you need to be moving, and no more. Alright, so this next question is from quite a few people, so I'm just going to sum it up in one quick sentence. Do you PvP? Alright, so I don't really PvP. Not really because I don't like it, but because, well, first of all, I enjoy PvE more. And I have a limited amount of time playing WoW, so most of my time does end up being on PvE, on raiding. Uh, but even if I did have way more time to play WoW and I did decide to do PvP, it would just suck for a while because I would be farming BGs or whatever for so long just to be able to have enough resilience to not get killed in like 2 seconds. And yeah, that's it. You know, that's kind of why I've just kind of been staying away from it, just because I don't want to farm for bloodthirsty or whatever. You know, maybe if I would have done that bridge trick, you know, getting 1800 honor for a couple of weeks, maybe then it would have been okay, but I don't know. At this time, I just don't really have the time or the will to bear through that. Next question from Emmanuel095. If Decimation is up and Molten Core procs, what spell should I use sub 25%? Okay, so I've gotten this question a couple times in comments, and I believe I've answered it, and I've also gotten it a couple times in private messages, and I haven't answered it. But here's the thing. Well, first of all, let me answer it. Go with the Molten Core proc, and then switch back to Decimation once you're done with your Molten Core. But here's the thing. Whenever you have a question about what spell to cast at a certain moment, you know, if something procs or whatever, look at the spell priority. Whichever spell is higher up in your spell priority, that's the spell that has priority. That's a spell that you should be casting. You know, that's why it's a priority list. You know, you follow it. All right, final questions from Destroyed Dylan, who has 4 questions, and all of them are pretty good, I guess. All right, first question. When doing CC in an instance, are you keeping your pet on passive at all times and ordering it around to prevent it from attacking a feared target? Well, first of all, I always keep it on passive, but second of all, I was not aware that a defensive pet would attack a feared target. I think I've heard about the Felguard doing it, but I didn't know if the Imp or the Succubus would do it. But anyway, I just keep it on passive, so I don't have to worry about that. Number 2, can you have a discussion on macros? For example, I know some people use a macro to fix the above. Are you using any? I'm not, but about macros, I think I'm going to be having a guide video sometime in the future regarding some useful macros, so thank you for asking. That might be coming sometime in the future. Probably not this week, though. At what point is it acceptable to let a DOT drop? For example, if I have 1 second left before Haunt is off cooldown, is it better to cast a Fell Flame and hit Haunt as soon as it's up, or should I be casting another Shadow Bolt and risking Haunt dropping? I recognize that there is a 4-second difference between Haunt cooldown popping and when it falls off, but what do you usually do in this situation I frequently find myself in? So if you got 1 second left on your Haunt, you should probably still just cast a Shadow Bolt and then cast Haunt as soon as you finish your Shadow Bolt. And Haunt should get there before it drops off. But if you feel like you're pretty far away from the boss and you don't think it's going to get there in time, then I would say the best thing to do is to cast a Life Tap and then cast Haunt. That's probably going to be a lot better than, you know, a little bit of damage from Fell Flame. You know, getting back a bunch of mana and not having to Life Tap during a burn phase, you know, will give you a lot more damage. All right, so the 4th question is another hypothetical, I guess. 3 targets in a heroic. Cast my dots on main target, soul swap, and put him on the 2nd target. Right now, I would probably leave the 3rd target alone since soul swap is now on 10-second cooldown. Should I be doing anything with the 3rd target, or maybe more that can improve my DPS? Perhaps Seed of Corruption. Yes, there's a lot you can do there actually that can improve upon your DPS on those 3 little targets. So first of all, here's what you're doing. You're putting up 3 dots on your main target, all right? That's 3 global cooldowns. You're soul swapping and you're exhaling. That's 2 more global cooldowns. Now, you have your 3rd target alone, which you should be dotting up, and that'll increase your damage. So that's 3 more global cooldowns. And you got 8 global cooldowns there just to dot up those 3 targets. Instead, what you could be doing is Soulburn Seed of Corruption. That's 1 global cooldown. And then you're going to be applying Unstable Affliction to all 3 of them. You're going to be applying Bane of Agony to all 3 of them. And that's 7 cooldowns instead of 8. And you did exactly the same thing you did before, except you just did it faster here. So another thing you can do in addition to that to do more damage is to Shadow Flame them. You know, you're doing AoE damage there, and it does a nice little dot. And then once you got Shadow Flame on them, then you just got to be using your spell priority on your main target while maintaining the dots on the secondary targets, and that's how you're going to be doing more damage. Alright guys, so that's going to do it for this week's More Dots. Hopefully I answered your questions well. Sorry that the video was so long, but I got a lot of good questions this week that I just had to answer. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below or in a private message, and if it's good, I will get to it next week on More Dots. New guide this Thursday. I'll be announcing what it's about tomorrow in either a bulletin or a channel comment, or most likely both. And as always, if you guys enjoyed what you saw, feel free to like, to comment, and to subscribe. Later, guys.